this time we are at the 27th annual Vintage and Modern Toy Fair here in the fine city of Norwich, and unbeknownst to myself, this was about to become my most expensive toy hunt of all time.
Get pickups! Rush trips! Not get your head!
Hello again folks, and welcome back to a very special toy hunting episode. That's because this time we are off to the 27th annual Norwich Modern and Retro Toy Fair here in the fine city of Norwich. And this time I'm on the lookout for something very, very specific. That's because recently I purchased this Grail item for myself right here from good friend and long-term viewer of the channel, Rob. Now, him and his son Lucas watch the channel every single week, and as soon as he had this for sale, he knew I was the right person to sell this to. He knew I would want this in my collection. I'm going to show you exactly why this is one of the best wrestling toys of all time. I'm sure for a lot of wrestling fans, your first memory of wrestling toys will be the absolutely iconic Hasbro WWF figures. But for me, I started watching wrestling in the late 90s, in the height of the Attitude Era, and at the time, this was the toy to have. I remember seeing the adverts for this toy and being absolutely blown away. I couldn't believe the technology as such that went into this toy. This was an absolutely incredible playset, and I knew one day eventually I'd have to have it. What makes this really cool is when you take one of these Tron ready figures and place it on the Titantron, something super cool happens. Check this out. If you're a wrestling fan, you're about to get hit with super nostalgia. It plays the wrestler in question's specific entrance music. It lights up, and how cool is that? This is why I knew I needed to have this toy in my collection. That's why today at the Norwich Toy Market we are on the lookout for vintage WWF Jakks Titantron ready figures. There is an easy way to spot these figures. They have these two metal lines on the feet, and hopefully we can find a few more figures to add to my Titantron collection. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and please subscribe, as I put new videos out every Saturday live at 5, as well as bonus content throughout the week, and I really want you folks along for the ride. And if you want to go above and beyond and support the channel that little bit more, please consider becoming a supporter over on Patreon. You get loads of bonus content, including, spoiler alert, coming up in August, a lot of behind the scenes wrestling content. Here we go then folks, something a little bit different this time. Once again, bright and early on a Sunday morning here in the fine city of Norwich for the 27th Vintage and Modern Toy Fair at the Mercer Hotel. And as you can see, some dates to save for the diary. This comes around every quarter and is definitely worth attending if you're a fan of either modern or retro toys. And straight away, here is a very awesome toy. Some vintage 1980s TMNT Playmates figures and vehicles. And I'm a massive fan of these. These were one of my main toys of my childhood, and I'm slowly regaining the toys from my childhood. And today I'm going to grab this one, Rocksteady, for just £6, and I have this one for a very special purpose, but more about that in the pickups. The toy fair itself has various opening times, so the entire fair opens at 9:30 and the entry at that point is £5, but this is when you can get some of the very best items. But fair warning, it is very busy at that time. I've come slightly later at 10:30 when entry is just £2, and there's still absolutely tons of amazing toys here. But even better, if you fancy it a little bit quieter and a little bit of a later start, you can come in from 11:30 for free, and trust me, even though it's a little bit later, there'll still be some amazing toys here. Let's get into some toys then, and straight away I'm hitting some major nostalgia here. Toy Soldiers. Who remembers this toy line and the amazing movie? Absolutely fantastic film, fantastic figures, and a new set of toys I'm very tempted to start collecting. But without a shadow of a doubt, this right here is my favourite modern toy line to collect for. TMNT NECA cartoon double packs. These are a thing of absolute beauty. They hit me right in nostalgia, as my favourite cartoon growing up, without a shadow of a doubt, was TMNT. I absolutely loved that cartoon. I collected the figures back in the day, in the late 80s, and I still love the cartoon to this day, so I had to pick up this double pack as it was sorely missing from my collection. But of course, it's not just the modern TMNT figures I love. I will always love the OG Playmates figures. There's just something about these that just pulls on my heartstrings. I love them so much, and this one right here is one of my favourites, Casey Jones. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of my favourite TMNT characters of all time. Both me and my wife are massive D&D and board games fans, so we did bundle this up with that TMNT NECA double pack because bundling is always best. This stall just had a little bit of everything I like. This is another toy line, which I think a lot of people have forgotten about, the Kenner Aliens toy line. It still confuses me to this day, and I think I say this every time I go to the toy fair. It still confuses me they made a toy line for Aliens, a film with a 15 rating aimed at children. It just boggles the mind. Now, this may come as a surprise to some people. It's not just toys at the toy market. There are some sellers with video games, which obviously for myself is great to see. This was actually a seller I am quite familiar with. He does sell periodically at Arming Hall Car Boots. There wasn't really anything for me here today, but nonetheless a very good selection of video games at the toy market. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of my favourite things about toy hunting is finding toy lines I've never seen before, like these Five Nights at Freddy's figures, which actually had a surprisingly high price tag, and if nothing else, it's worth keeping an eye out for figures like this to resell to fun toys you do want to pick up. This store had a really good selection of figures, including these hilarious Austin Powers dolls, which they'd renamed, which did surprise me. I did think at first this was the Transformers game for the Xbox 360 because the price of some of those games has gone absolutely through the roof, but unfortunately this Xbox One game hasn't gone the same way yet. But let me know in the comments down below, do you expect in the future all Transformers games are going to go up in value? Now, here is something I get tempted to pick up all of the time, graded comics, because for me, one of my favourite things about comics is the artwork. I haven't pulled the trigger quite yet because honestly, I just haven't found the right comic. Let me get this fact straight. I love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I absolutely adored the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem film. It is a toy line I haven't started to collect for quite yet, just because of space, and honestly, I am tempted to collect those figures loose, which would be a first for myself. I don't normally go for loose figures, thus why I love NECA figures so much, because no other company other than NECA displays their figure with such love and attention. I just love them. Finally, we have found some wrestling figures, and I am very hopeful I can find some Tron-ready figures in here from Jax. And there was a very good selection of wrestling figures in here. Now, don't get me wrong, in the future I am going to extend what lines of wrestling figure I hunt for, but today we are looking for the Titantron-ready figures. And like I said at the start of this video, you can tell these because of the metal bits on their feet. And I'm just having to get stuck in here. These are 3 for a $5, I think, and straight away, yes, we have our first figure here. But can you tell who it is yet? A lot of these Jax Tron figures do not have the greatest likeness, and some of these, it's kind of hard to tell who they're supposed to be. But I'm just trying to get dug in, just finding these figures. There's some really, really cool ones. There's like some vintage WCW figures, some vintage WWE, WWF figures, a really good selection of wrestling figures. And this is what I love at toy markets, just getting deep and hunting. Like, I'm so glad I found this one. One of my favourite Stone Cold Steve Austin figures ever made. It just captures his essence so perfectly. I love the kind of over-the-top nature of these Jax figures. Very happy to find 3 figures here. 3 for a $5, a great start to the collection. That's incredibly cool. Some big money on that one, yeah? $350, yeah. They're nice though, aren't they? They are really nice.
They're the Hot Toys one.
Yeah.
The only one that I can find is that.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Now, I've shown in this video already, there are some cheap retro and modern toys out there, but if you have the budget, there is some crazy, crazy toys available, such as those Resident Evil figures. They were a thing of absolute beauty, but they had a cost, and that cost was very, very high. But toy collecting doesn't have to be expensive. Look at this absolutely incredible Gyarados here. I think this was just £10. I have never seen this Pokemon toy line before, and honestly, if I had a bit more space, I'd be tempted to start collecting for it. Lots of variety here on this next store. We had some TMNT Super 7 figures, which again is another figure set which I haven't really jumped into collecting yet. They're just very big, so I probably would pass on these ones. Lots of cool stuff here, some more video games, some consoles, just some really nice bits. I love stores like this at the toy market. It's just a little bit of everything. Everything I love all in one place. Even though I was very tempted by this copy of Pokemon Stadium, a game which is sorely missing from my collection, but I think I'm going to hold out to get one in really, really nice mint condition. Now, I don't say this very often, but how cool is this pop? Blink 182, absolutely iconic artwork, a really cool set, but again, very, very large. Some really nice bits here, some of these new Dungeons and Dragons figures. Again, very tempted to pick up, but very large. For me, toy collecting is about space, and sadly, I'm slowly running out of space, but there's always room for more toys. These were pretty cool to see, these vintage electronic handheld games. Yes, I know what you're thinking, most of these played absolutely rubbish, but for me, it's the nostalgia for the artwork. It just captures the feeling of the 80s, maybe even the 70s so perfectly. I like that Scale X trick there, because honestly, for me, when it comes to retro collecting, the artwork is 50% of the love. Here's a toy line which has been forgotten to the ages, the Independence Day movie figures. Now, I remember seeing these back in the day at Tesco and thinking these were super duper cool. So one thing that's normally missing from these is the little tiny alien which rides inside the armour as such. But one of the best things about this figure line is the fact that every single figure and vehicle came with a floppy disk. Yes, folks, this is a throwback to a time when a floppy disk could either destroy or save the world. One thing I would say negatively, though, about this toy line is unfortunately the figures and the vehicles are nowhere near the same scale. But I suppose, if not, the vehicles would be absolutely massive or the figures would be truly tiny. But a very, very cool toy line nonetheless. Here's something cool to see, a Nintendo Game & Watch console. 50 quid. I have no idea about these ones, if that's a good price or a bad price, but let me know if you know it in the comments down below. It's something I've never really dabbled in, but undoubtedly this was super, super cool. And speaking of super cool, this next stall had some really super cool toys. Loads of video game crossover toys as well, like Gears of War, Resident Evil. But some of these were super pricey. But here's the thing, with some of these rarer figures, you are going to be paying a premium price. This is a figure which I've always loved. The Headshot Locust. I just love the fact they've got an action figure which has had its head blown clean off and the blood splatter just looks super cool. I kind of like these modern Aliens figures, the kind of reimagining of the Kenner classics. They're super cool. And this took me by surprise how expensive some of these Borderlands figures are. Now, I have a few of these Borderlands figures, but I do not have Claptrap, and I did not realise that is £100 figure. Also, hiding the top here, some really cool video games. Throwback to that little Pokédex there. This boxed N64 memory card was super cool. I love the fact how they put the memory cards and expansion packs in the same boxes for the games. It just makes it so much easier to display. Something I would love to display in the future. Hiding right at the top here, one of the hardest games of all time, The Simpsons Bart vs Space Mutants. Don't fight it, this game was tough. This, for me, was one of my favourite things to collect in my childhood, trading cards. I don't care what it was, I would collect the trading cards for it. I think one of my favourite sets of trading cards of all time, you will see in a minute, was the X-Files trading cards. It's one of the very few sets that I actually managed to get the complete Series 1 and Series 2 of those cards. Because that's the thing, with trading cards, it's super hard to get a complete set, because you just buy packets and you randomly find your cards and hope to get the full set. It's a real shame there's not more trading cards around these days, or normally the ones there are very, very expensive. I remember them being cheap back in the day. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but still super nostalgic for myself. We're coming to the end of the toy fair. I've picked up some pretty awesome bits, but nothing that I needed for my collection so far, because sometimes when you see that item you just need, you know you have to have it. I did like these TMNT Mutagen figures. I thought they were super cool. There's some nice little figures mixed in here. Some aliens, some bits like that. You know, I just love digging through piles of figures like this, because sometimes you just find some absolute gold in here. That was quite an interesting looking Predator. But thankfully, one last find. As I've said all along, we've been hunting for vintage Jakks Pacific Titantron ready WWF figures, and we have another massive box of figures here. This time I managed to get 4 for £10. Straight away grabbed that rock, because that jacket is absolutely pimping. Like that leopard print jacket. Here we have one half of the Hardy Boys. Hopefully we can find a full tag team in here. It's hard to find these figures, especially when they're in massive boxes like this. You just have to dig deep and find them, and I will find them. Like, if it's 4 for a tenner, I'm finding 4. Here's my third figure, Mankind. One I definitely know works with that original Titantron, so very happy to pick that one up. Very underrated superstar, the Attitude Era. Thought Crash Holly might have been one. Unfortunately not. No, not Tron ready this one. We're just looking to find our very last figure here, and thankfully, in the final moments, we find the other half of the Hardy Boys. We were coming to the end of the Norwich Toy Fair and I could not believe my eyes when I saw this. This right here is one of my holy grail modern toys. As I said earlier, the TMNT NECA line is my favourite line of modern toys, and this commands a high price tag. And I could not believe they had all 4 of the turtles. Yes, they are £100 per box, but these are figures you do not see very often. And to see Shredder and Krang as well just blew my mind. And I had to compose myself. I had to get outside, have a word, think about my budget, and see if I could make a deal on these literal holy grail toys which I needed for my collection. So I've had a little think.
Yeah.
Got the credit card.
Okay.
Would you do 200 on the free at all?
I really struggled with 230 to be honest. That was probably my absolute limit.
220?
Is it just, so it's just those 3 you want, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to have the 4th one?
No, I've actually got the split
Oh,
back.
you've
so-
got that one?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I think for the 225.
Yeah, done. Let's go that. Here we are then, back in the games room from the absolutely incredible Norwich Toy Fair. And yes, things did get out of hand and very, very expensive. But first off, let's start off with some of our cheaper pickups for the collection. So the first item I picked up was this vintage 1988 Playmates TMNT Rocksteady figure. And this was only £6. And this is a figure, once again, specifically, which I've been after for a little while. That's because, once again, earlier in this year, I picked up a specific toy which was missing this figure. And the toy in question is this absolutely iconic TMNT, once again, vintage Playmates footski, which you can see is being ridden by Rocksteady. So I knew I needed to have this specific figure in my collection to complete this incredible, incredible toy. For me, toy collecting is all about how you display your toys, and I knew I needed this figure to complete the footski. To have it on its vehicle in front of the box is going to be a thing of absolute beauty, and for just £5, this was a cheap, awesome retro pickup. We were on the lookout for something very specific this time at the Norwich Toy Fair. Vintage WWF Jakks Titantron Ready figures. Now these weren't the most beloved figure line of all time, just because some of the likenesses are a bit... But for me, this was the figure line that was out when I first started watching WWF, so I will always love it. So first off, we picked up this bundle of figures for just £5. So here we have Stone Cold Steve Austin, my favourite wrestler of the Attitude Era. Then we have one which it took me a while to guess who this is. Can you tell who it is yet? Now, I wouldn't have guessed until I saw the shorts. This is Edge. Now, this last figure of this bundle is a difficult one. Who's this? This one took me a while until I noticed on the boots, it's Chris Jericho. Now, here's the thing. Some of these figures have got a questionable likeness, and these are all Tron ready figures, but only some of these figures work with the first generation Titantron. I also built a follow-up toy, the SmackDown entrance and the trash talking stage. But for me, I just wanted to keep collecting these Jakks figures. Some of them work with the original Titantron, some don't, but for me, it's all about putting them together in an awesome wrestling collection. Here's the next bundle of WWF Jakks figures we picked up, and these were 4 for £10. And first off, we have Mankind. Now, this one does work with the Titantron Live playset. I've tried this one out. It plays his music. It's absolutely awesome. Next up, we have one which I knew I had to pick up, but it doesn't work with the Titantron Live, because just look at The Rock here in this leopard print jacket. Absolutely incredible. And next up, we have, without a shadow of a doubt, not just one of the greatest tag teams of the Attitude Era, one of the greatest tag teams of all time, the Hardy Boys. These are some of my favourite Hardy Boys figures they ever released, and very happy to add these 4 figures to the collection for just £10. Which brings us on to our next pickup, which is from, without a shadow of a doubt, my favourite modern toy line from NECA, the TMNT cartoon double packs. These, for me, capture the essence of the 80s TMNT cartoon like no other figure has done before. And it displays them in the most beautiful way. I love the artwork, to have the characters on the side, the iconic logo, and some of my favourite characters from the TV show in these double packs. And they match the packs so well. So here we have Vernon and Rat King. This pack was just £25, which was a really, really good price. But trust me, as you're about to find out, this is a toy line which is very, very expensive to collect for. On that fateful Sunday morning when I went to Norwich Toy Fair, I had no idea that this was to become my most expensive toy hunt of all time. That's because I was never in a million years expecting to see not one, not two, but 3 of my Holy Grail toys. Toys which I've never seen in person before. These are expensive NECA playsets. They are rare, and I could not believe that somebody was selling all 3 at once. When it comes to the NECA cartoon TMNT line, it is these sets right here, the Turtles sets, that command the highest price. That's because these were released years ago and they have never done until recently a re-release of the original Turtles. These are super duper to find, and of course, as a Turtles fan, you want the 4 brothers. These are the figures you want. You can see here, this box alone was up for £100. I'll put some eBay sold listings on the side. £100 is a very, very good price for this set right here. But I made a deal on all 3 of these double packs for £225, making this my most expensive toy hunt of all time, but so worth it. Here we have the second set right here then. Once again, it was up for £100, Leonardo and Donatello. And just check out the detail, not just on the figures, but on the box. The art for these figures is absolutely incredible. Now, I am mainly a CIB in-box toy collector, and you can see why. Look at these figures. They look super cool in the box. I was so happy to finally own the 4 brothers, but this final box set, I cannot believe I've managed to add to my collection. I have never ever seen this NECA box set in the wild. Shredder and Krang box set. This is an incredibly rare toy, and it commands a high price. So I paid £225 for these 3 box sets, and this one by itself commands a high portion of this price. And well, just look at it. It's absolutely incredible. 2 of the greatest bad guys of any Saturday morning cartoon of all time. And I'm so glad to finally have this set in my NECA collection. There we have it then, folks. That was the 27th Vintage and Modern Toy Fair here in the fine city of Norwich. It has absolutely blown my mind and destroyed my wallet, but it was absolutely incredible. I could not have wished in a million years to find one of those TMNT box sets, let alone 3 of my Holy Grail modern toy finds. But let me know in the comments down below, what is your Holy Grail vintage or modern toy? I can't wait to read some of your comments. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, keep playing the game. See you soon.